Hello, good afternoon, everyone. We will start the session in approximately 5 more minutes to wait for the other participant to join with us. Okay, thank you.
Udah masuk gak?
Belum. Teh poci itu minuman paling enak.
Enggak juga.
Bagi gua paling enak.
Ya, sangat-sangat enak.
Karena tidak
Coba lu lihat video gua ya.
Ih,
Bebek.
gimana? Lihat tangannya.
Emang lu ngeliat gua?
Jangan dong, gua lagi makan nih. Masa gua nggak bisa? Ya orang nggak nyala juga. Nyala deh.
Oh, itu lagi.
Ah. Masa gua balik ke sini mulu sih?
Hah?
Gua nggak bisa. Gua mau nyalain kamera nih. Tapi kan jelek ya kamera ini. Nyalain kamera aja.
Lu mau kedengeran itu suara lu?
Iya pak. Nanti itu udah nyala.
Oh.
Halo, Mas Ruli.
Ya, halo Mas Haris.
Yuk, dengan Mas Ruli ya.
Ya, benar.
Mas Punten, ini beberapa peserta kayaknya belum connect ke audio. Boleh minta tolong di chat pesertanya.
Tinggal dipilih aja sih Mas yang connect ke audionya itu diklik aja Mas nanti. Yang ini Mas bentar.
Untuk pesertanya.
Oh, pesertanya ya.
Ya, beberapa belum connect gitu kayaknya.
Itu bahasa Inggris Mas ya. Bentar.
Ya, let's go.
Mungkin caranya saya ketik dulu Mas ya.
Ya, kasih Mas.
Yuk.
Kita mulai 3 menit lagi Mas ya.
Oke.
Bantuannya. Terima kasih.
Cek. Ya. Internet. Bisa senang. Ya. Jangan nangis ya Budi.
Sabai.
Aku kok ditinggal.
Halo, Mas.
Jangan nangis.
Boleh
Ya.
ngomong sekarang, Mas Ruli?
Ya, silakan Mas.
Oke, minta tolong di reminder chat untuk ini ya, aktifkan apa?
Ya. Oke, aktifkan itu audionya.
Oke. Okay, hello. No, it's already up. Okay, hello, good afternoon, everyone. So we meet again in our final meeting. So we do hope that after all of our meeting, you have gained some insight, some new knowledge on the technologies of urban agriculture. And we hope that you already have planned and understand which technology will you implement in your schools. Okay, so for today, we will talk about the topics on identifying and documenting best practice in school-based urban agricultures. And after that, we will also discuss about your final assignment, which is to create the project proposal. So with us today, Dr. Jess Fernandez is the Deputy Director from Simeo Biotrop. Okay, so please, Dr. Jess, time is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Harris. Good afternoon, everyone. And Sawadee Cup for our participant from Thailand. I'm not sure whether there is one participant from the Philippines. Magandang hapon. So welcome to our session this afternoon. First of all, I would like to congratulate everyone for really staying behind until this last session of our online course. Congratulations, we appreciate your patience and also your interest to continue on until the last part of our session this afternoon. So like Mr. Harit said, our session for this afternoon is about identifying and documenting best practices in school-based urban agriculture. So for our discussion this afternoon, I will be defining what is best practice and then why do we need to identify and document best practices in urban agriculture. And I will also discuss where you can find the best practice in your urban agriculture activities in your school and how do you identify them? What are the criteria for identifying best practice? And last, how do you write and document your best practice so everybody can also learn from your activities? Okay? So I don't know if some of you have heard the term best practice, but if you would like to define that, it means it is any technique or method that has been proven reliably through your experience or you do research and it leads to a desired result. For example, if you try to come up with your hydroponic and then every month you have been producing very nice veggies or vegetables every harvest, maybe there's something that is very good in the way you practice your hydroponic system. So that means that could be one best practice. Whether your combination of the mixture A and B is okay, or the way you regulate your water, or the place where you put your hydroponic system and so on and so forth, those can be part of a best practice because sometimes we just put our hydroponic where there is available space, but we don't consider whether there's enough sunlight, whether the temperature is okay, and so on and so forth. Okay? And also, best practice is also defined as a knowledge or experience about what works in a specific situation and context. So sometimes if you try something, it may not be working every time. You know? So that's why if something really works well, that could be a best practice. And in other terminologies, best practice is also called good practice. So this is how we define what a best practice is. I will repeat, it is a technique or any method or any knowledge or any experience that you have performed and it has brought you very good results. That is what we call best practice. Okay, so we move on. Maybe you would ask, what is the importance of this session for today? Because this is very conceptual or theoretical, but in school setting, we need to have best practice because we would like to avoid repeating the same mistakes. For example, if you practice hydroponics or pot gardening or you plant directly in the soil for the first time and you don't have any experience yet, then it's always trial and error. Maybe your plant will grow and maybe your plant will not grow. But if we have best practice already, anyone can follow your practice and then they don't have to commit the mistake anymore. The second reason why we need to identify and document our best practice in urban agriculture is that we can ensure how efficient and how effective we do our activity in urban agriculture. Maybe Ms. Rihanna has already mentioned how much is the requirement for operating a hydroponic. It's not cheap. It's also very expensive. But because if we already have best practice, we don't have to waste resources anymore. We just have to follow what has been proven to be very efficient and very effective. So that's why we need to practice or document our best practice. In the school setting, the concept of best practice is to make learning much easier. For the teachers, for example, sometimes there are subjects that you will be teaching your students for the first time. And even you, maybe this is the first time that you will be teaching your students about urban agriculture. But if we already have documents about your best practice, then it will be easier for you to teach to your students, and your students will also be learning it much easier and faster. And because of that, once we already have the best practice, many more people in similar situations that you have and context can benefit. Maybe not only the students and the teachers in the schools, but also the people surrounding your school, the communities, the parents of your students, your family, and all other people around you. If they see that you have best practice and you have documented that, then they can right away pick it up and also learn from you very easily. That's how important to identify and document best practices. Okay, so let's move on. I hope these are clear to you. So maybe you will ask now, so where can we find best practices in our urban agriculture activities? There are 3 areas where you can find and observe and document best practices in your urban agriculture activities. First is at the technology level. Second, at system level. and third, at the aspect level. So I will be discussing with you one by one these three levels so you can know where you can start observing and documenting your best practice. Okay? So at the technology level, maybe you can look into your method. All the resource persons that you have in the past has given you the methods of composting, aquaponics, soil and garden-based, soil-based gardening, hydroponic, and and mushroom. So you can find what methods works well. So you can focus on the technology level, or maybe is there something that is really good in your procedure in doing mushroom production, hydroponics, aquaponics, pot gardening, and so on and so forth. Or maybe you have some very interesting materials that you have used, and so this is something maybe interesting for other people to know, and it is very effective and very efficient. That could be a best practice at the technology level. Or sometimes the kinds of plants that we use could be where we can find the best practice. In fact, I'm telling our resource persons that in most cases here in Indonesia, we observe that you grow more kangkung in the hydroponic, right? But there are many kinds of vegetables that you can plant. For example, it could be a best practice because we are in the tropics. You know, the tropics, we have two seasons, the dry season and the wet season, or in Indonesia, we call it musim hujan and musim kemarau. So if we have two seasons, we can only plant tropical plants. But if you can introduce some temperate plants, like what? Like broccoli or cauliflower or anything that grows in the mountain with high temperature, and then you grow it in tropical condition, that is a best practice. That is a technology level. Okay, so this is just one aspect. You focus more on the technology to find the best practice. Okay, we move on to the system level. So the system level talks about how big the urban agriculture activity that you would like to do. In your case, all of you falls under the school-based level because you are doing urban agriculture in your school. But there are also people doing urban agriculture at the household level in your respective family. That's why hopefully after this training course, your students can also tell their parents to also start practicing urban agriculture. And when they do that, that means the urban agriculture practice is at the household level, at the family level. There are also those that really neighbors work together, they find one vacant area in their community and they start to plant vegetables, do verticulture, do hydroponic or even aquaponic, and that's what you call community-based urban agriculture system level. And in fact, now, especially in the European countries and the US, there are a lot of urban agriculture that are being done at the commercial level. I'm not sure whether you are familiar with vans, the big vans, and they convert it into planting areas, but they make use of a lot of lighting, LED lights, to substitute for the sunshine. And these are all producing so many in the urban areas in the US, in Europe, or even in Southeast Asia. I think in Thailand, they have that already on the commercial basis. So, but for you, your focus is more on school-based, and that's where your level is. At the aspect level, you can see whether you have good practice as far as economic aspect or environmental aspect or social aspect. So these are the three aspect levels where you can find best practices in your urban agriculture course. Something wrong? Okay. Okay, so maybe we can pause for a while because of some technical glitch. Please wait for a while, but maybe they cannot hear. Just wait for a while because there's some technical problem here. So our PowerPoint got stuck. Okay, so I hope you're still with me. So once again, I have discussed about where you can find your best practice in your urban agriculture in terms of the technology levels. So you can see, is there any best practice in my method, in my procedures, in the materials that I use, in the types of plant that I use also? That's what you call technology level. You can find your best practice there. Or at the system level, but you will be focusing more on the school-based because you are all in school. In fact, in the school, the differences are there are some schools that have land connection loss. Sorry, I think connection lost. Oh. Please be patient. There are some technical glitch problems. We'll be ready in a few minutes. Okay. Nggak bisa jalan PowerPoint. What happened? Well, anyway, so I hope you're still with us. Please be patient. We are just having some adjustments in our system. Okay, ya, silakan.
Hmm.
But they are not responding here. Can we start from the beginning? Atau masih ada? Oh, can't hear me. Yes. Because
Enggak, kayaknya deh. Hello, test, check sound. Can you hear me now?
Yes, Mas Haris.
Okay, so at what point do we get lost?
By aspect lang. Put everything.
Okay, so we will continue the explanation.
Okay. Well, first of all, our apology for the disruption because of some technical limitation or problem we have here. So going back, I said, where we can find the best practices in urban agriculture? I have discussed about the technology level, the system level, and now the aspect level. Because when we talk about urban agriculture, there are three aspects that it addresses. One, economic, because you produce something. Second, environmental, because we are dealing with plants and maybe animals and fish. And then the health and social social aspect, because it talks about the nutrition, education, and culture and community aspects. When we do urban agriculture, it's all about relationship. So these are the three areas where you can find best practices in your urban agriculture activities. But let's discuss more on the aspect level. So let's move on to the next slide. The economic aspect. It could be the best practice could be maybe you can be using vegetable wastes as compost. So you will not anymore buy fertilizers, but you are recycling your waste, vegetable waste. I think Professor Arif has mentioned about this in his session. Another aspect, economic aspect, is maybe the best practice is recycling the materials and using natural materials. For example, using bottles, that is another aspect, economic aspect. But if you will remember, I think our director also showed a photo. There's one teacher that uses banana bark. Do you know the bark? The apa ya, or the bark, when you the trunk of the banana, instead of using poly bags, they use the bark to make a poly bag, but make use of banana bark, and then they just put the soil so it becomes usable. This is an example of using natural materials in coming up with your pots. Okay. On the other hand, if you are practicing seed stocking, it means like every time you harvest, you deposit or set aside some seeds so you can plant them again instead of buying another pack from the store. So this is also a best practice as far as economic aspect is concerned. On the other hand, there are some schools, like I said, very limited spaces. But urban agriculture, like has been discussed by Dr. Erdika, you can have urban agriculture in the walls of your school, atau dinding, as we call it in Indonesia, or the regular setup of hydroponics. You know, you can have your hydroponics 1 meter left by 1 meter, so it will not occupy much space. Or you can, maybe some of you have rooftop, then you can use the rooftop to have pot gardening or raised bed gardening and so on and so forth. That could be a best practice, especially if you have limitations on the spaces that you have in your schools. The other thing, and this has been practiced by many, in some areas, for example, here in Indonesia, in NTB and NTT, there's not much rain. So every time there's rain, they already have the technology to catch the rainwater so they can make use of the rainwater when dry season comes, or they have the well, or how do you call well in
Sumur.
sumur, yeah, or in the Philippines we call it balon. So you tap the water table down below because of the rain. All the rain goes down, but sometimes you need this kind of creativity so you can have less expenses in using water from your school. Okay? And another one is some schools, you may already be selling your produce, your harvest. And so you can already generate some income from your gardens, and you use this income to once again buy some materials for your urban agriculture. So these are some just best practices as far as the economic aspect is concerned. And so many things more that maybe you can think about later. Next is, how do we have best practice at the environmental aspect? Not so sure. For example, I have learned from Mr. Harris that one school already uses organic, or not anymore the A and B for the hydroponic, but they have already come up with another way of using this kind of formulation to grow vegetables, right?
For hydroponics.
For hydroponic. In fact, there was one school also that I have encountered. They use cocoa peat, but they powderize it, not the soil, but it also adds to the nutrients for the hydroponic. When you do that, instead of just having the rock wool, but you can substitute that. So these are something that you would like to practice as organic farming. The other thing when you talk about environmental aspect is like, how well do you use the water resources in your school, or the soil that you have in your school, or even the energy, because when you do some hydroponics or aquaponics, or even other forms of urban agriculture, you use electricity in some ways. But maybe you have some best practice to minimize or use properly these resources in your school. The other thing is, when you use or plant as many vegetables as you can, then you are promoting biodiversity conservation. Not only kangkong, or not only sawi, how do they call it in English? Spinach or bayam, but maybe you can find what is available in my province or in my village that I can also grow, especially in Indonesians, because you have this, when you eat, you have so many lalapan, but you cannot see that in the market every now and then. Maybe you would like to plant this, and so this is also conserving the biodiversity of what we have in our communities. And there's also now a growing interest on what we call zero waste production. Nothing is thrown away. Everything is used from production until harvesting and then back again. So this is what we call zero waste production, because we don't want to contribute to the waste in our environment. Imagine how many plastics are every day collected in our school, papers, cardboards, and everything that is not organic. And that's why if there is flooding, if there's heavy rain, because these plastics clog our canals, then there would be flooding or banjir here in Indonesia. So these are some of the things that maybe you would like to observe in your practice, and maybe later on you would say, this is our best practice. The last one, which is about health and social aspects, I don't know how many of you as teachers, when you are doing your urban agriculture, is not just concentrating on the activity itself, but you are educating your students on why it is important to have urban agriculture, because we would like to have healthy source of vegetable. So what this vegetable is all about, this is the source of vitamin A, vitamin E, vitamin D. If you know the nutritional condition in your students, then you would like to plant vegetables that can help your student to gain the healthy status by eating the right kinds of vegetables. The other social aspect best practice is when we start strengthening the interaction among your students, because gardening is interaction. Although one person can do gardening, but it's more fun and exciting when you do it by team, by group. That's where the interaction is. So like, for example, do you assign your student to do this and another group to do that and another group to do that? So when they do everything, then you will have some output, and that is strengthening the social interaction among your students, or even linking with the communities or the parents or the teachers or the rest of the staff of the school. Everybody goes to urban agriculture, so there are a lot of interaction. The other social aspect is sometimes gardening is also physical and recreational activity. So how many of your students enjoy gardening? So maybe because that's a social aspect of urban agriculture. But what is the best practice for that? Like, for example, do you start singing together or before doing thing, or like greeting one another before doing urban agriculture so you can work well, no conflict, no whatsoever, just having promoting teamwork? That's part of social interaction or increasing recreation among your students. Not just a requirement in the school, but make sure that they are enjoying being involved in urban agriculture activities. The other thing is, of course, when you are teaching your students urban agriculture, you are increasing the knowledge and experiences on the technologies. That's why it's about social aspect, because education is social aspect. And of course, if your school has been linking with private sector or the local government or whoever NGO around your school, if you have the kind of practice to support your urban agriculture, then that could be one best practice that you have. So I'm just giving you some examples on how you would find some best practice in your school-based urban agriculture in terms of economic, environment, social, and health aspect. So we move on. I hope you can have some questions later on, but let's go continue with our lecture first. So when we say best practice, there are 8 criteria before you can say that your practice or your activity is best. And these are effectiveness, efficiency, relevance, ethical soundness, sustainability, replicability, community and partnership involvement, commitment of concerned authorities. Okay, let's discuss this one by one. Let's start with effectiveness. What do we mean by effectiveness? Effectiveness means the practice must work and achieve results that are measurable. You say that something is effective if you can measure the output. Because, for example, you say you planted how many seeds, and then how many of the seeds grow because you expected them to grow. So maybe your method or your procedure is effective. That's why you grow much of the seeds that you put in your rock pool and then they grow. That's effectiveness. Okay? So when we talk about efficiency, it is about talking that your practice can produce results with reasonable level of resources and time. It should not be very expensive. You can use whatever resources you have in your school. So for example, you don't need to have the concrete pipes to make hydroponic. Maybe if you have bamboos in your school, that can also be made into hydroponic. So you make efficient use of available resources in your school or in your community, and including time, because very important for the students, how much time do they have to involve in your urban agriculture activity? Because they might be going home, they have other assignments. So how do you manage your time to involve your student is a part of efficiency of the best practice. Next is relevance. It means the practice addresses the priority needs of your stakeholders. Maybe you can ask yourself, why do we need urban agriculture in my school? Is it requirement by my government, or I would like to have that because it can help my student learn something new and then increase their nutritional status or become more entrepreneur. So it is relevant to your students and to your school and even the communities where your school is located. Okay, the next criteria is about ethical soundness, and it means the practice must respect the current rules of ethics and stakeholders involved. For example, for our Indonesian teachers, is there anything about urban agriculture in the Islamic faith? Then we need to respect that. We don't have to do something that would violate any teaching in the Islam. In the same way, when in the Catholic or other religion, we need to respect what we believe in our religion or in the social norms that we have. Because if you don't want to kill animals, then you don't have to do that. For example, like if an example of this, like we produce ducks in the Philippines, and then we process the eggs of the ducks into, we call it balut. I don't know if you've heard about it. So we harvest the eggs. These are 7-day-old eggs or 14-day-old eggs, already semi-fertilized, and then we boil them. And then when we boil them, that will be the delicacy that we call balut. And when you open the egg, there's already a small chick in it. For some religion, it is not allowed. But for us, it's just fine because it's a source of protein. So that's what I call ethical soundness. Everything that we do must respect the ethics that we have been practicing as Indonesians, Thais, Filipinos, or whatever nationality you have. Okay? So the next 4 criteria, let's move on. It's all about sustainability. This is very important because this is one of our major criteria for the project assignment. Sustainability means if what you are doing right now can be implemented for a long, long time, not only for this month, not only for 3 months, but you can really sustain it and do it well without any problem. That is what you call sustainability, using the same resources. You can continue on year in, year out. That is sustainability. Not if only you have funding and then maybe next year don't have funding, then you don't do urban agriculture. That's not sustainable. Okay? Replicability, it means you can duplicate the activity in similar conditions. For example, I visited your school, then I saw your technique. Then I would like to copy that. I would tell you, I would like to copy this and practice in my own school. Then you can tell me, okay, Mr. Jess, you do this, you do that. This is our best practice. Then I follow. I apply it in my school and it works. Then that is replicability because your technique works also in my school. Okay? Partner and community involvement, this is self-explanatory. It will be nice if you will be involving the parents of your students, the communities around the school, so they can also benefit from your urban agriculture activity. And lastly is we consider urban agriculture practice in the school to be a best practice if the school had supported or even the rest of your co-teachers support it, not only you, but the rest of your colleagues or even the school staff, like the drivers, the security guard, the cleaner, if they all support urban agriculture in your school, then it means you have a committed school for urban agriculture. Okay, just let me know if I talk too fast. Just send SMS so I can see. But if not, it's okay. Then I will move on. So now this is the last part. Maybe after giving you the criteria of what best practice is all about, the next question is, how do we write our best practice so that other people can also learn from our best practice? So there are 4 or 5 components in documenting or writing your best practice. And it includes giving introduction and the background information, how you implemented the best practice, you tell your experience, what are the results, the outputs and the outcomes, and what lessons you learned so people will not repeat it. And lastly, the conclusions and the recommendations. So one by one, I will discuss that. Okay? So let's start with introduction or the background. So when we write about introduction and the background information, this should provide the context, the situation where you are now. Why do you do this best practice? So you may have to answer some questions like this. What was the problem that your school needed to address? Why did you do urban agriculture? Why are you practicing urban agriculture in your school? Is there any problem that you would like to solve? That's why you come up with your urban agriculture activities. And the next one is like, who were affected by this problem? For example, maybe you practice urban agriculture or school gardening because there are many students with poor nutritional status. That's why you would like to produce vegetables and you would like the vegetables to be consumed by your student. That's why you came up with this activity. And how did the problem impact on those affected? That's why, for example, if you have students with poor nutrition and then you started your urban agriculture because you wanted to help your students to increase their nutrition, and then what is the result? Did it improve your nutritional status of your students? And if yes, what were the objectives? Why, other than improving the nutritional status of your students, what other objectives you have? And then if the objectives were accomplished, then all this would be in your introduction or the background information. Okay? The next part is the implementation of the practice. This is now describing what activities you carried out. So what do you do in your urban agriculture project? What kind of activities that you do? How were the activities carried out? For example, do you do that? Oh, well, when and where the activities carried out? That's why I asked, do you do that after class hours, or you integrate that during the classes, or just extracurricular activity, or you do that during the weekend? So how do you implement that? Do you involve all the students or only very few section? Do you involve all other members of the school or just the students, or do you get help from outside? So how do you implement your best practice? And who were the key implementers? Like, other than you as the teachers, do you have some help from your other co-teachers? Do you have do you connect with universities near your school for technical assistance? Something like that. So you describe this kind of the way you implement the best practice. And like you describe also what kind of resources that you use, so we can see whether you use it very efficiently, effectively, and then you can replicate it. Go back to the criteria that I discussed earlier. Okay? Next is now, once you describe the way you conduct your urban agriculture, so what is now the result? So now you describe what, because of these activities that we do, we produce this. These are the outcomes and the outputs. So what were the concrete results when you do your urban agriculture? So for example, if we do urban agriculture, my students are more happy, they're more active, they're more focused in their studies, they're more excited to go to school. You know, these are the results when you have urban agriculture. And maybe like, oh, now I learned my students eat more vegetables, and they also plant vegetables in their families, and so now you have this kind of result. And then also would like to do whether, did you evaluate that? Did you do you have evidence to say that these are the results? So did you carry out evaluation or assessment? And if yes, then you can include that in your section on the results of the practice. This is very important because, like, if the results really help your students, that is really best practice. Like, there was one school that we granted fund. The teacher tested because in her class, many students fall asleep every day, especially in lecture like this. The students would just like feel sleepy, ngantok gitu, in Indonesia. And so she used the urban agriculture concept. They planted the vegetables. They asked a nutritionist to help them what kind of vegetables can control the sleepiness of the students. So that's what they grow. They grow the vegetables, and then they feed it, because the teacher selected 12 students that really fall asleep every day. So only the 12 students. And so they came up with menu, breakfast menu, lunch menu, and also dinner, because the students live in the dormitory, asrama. They have that. So they feed the students for 2 months to test whether the vegetables and the menu that they prepare can help control the sleepiness of the students, you know. Interestingly, not significant results yet, maybe because the feeding program was only done for 2 months. Maybe if they will continue, they would see the effect later on. But eventually they found out that this is the realization of the teacher, that they have so many other activities in the school. So that makes the students very tired in the afternoon and they just want to sleep. So, I'm just giving you an example whether what kind of results that you can get from your activities. That's why that it's called best practice. And the last one, or I mean second to the last, what are the lessons learned? So when you do the practice, what lessons do you get out of doing it? You ask yourself, what worked well and what did not work well? And for things, activities that work well, what make it work well? What facilitated it? What helped you be successful? So those are lessons learned. Or if your activity did not work, why did it not work? What are the factors? Why you failed? So these are lessons learned in the practice. And lastly, the conclusion is, of course, you know how to conclude, no? How the results have benefited your school, what is the impact to your school, and why do you think your activity should be called best practice? And then what will you recommend? So for other people to learn from your best practice, what can you tell them? What can you recommend? So for example, in my case, like I said earlier, if I want to learn from you, I have to read your best practice and then I will read your recommendation. This is the recommendation, so I can do this also. Then I learn. That is what we call best practice documentation. Of course, it takes a long time to practice how to write and how to identify your best practice. But what I gave you is the idea. So when you are already implementing your urban agriculture activities, you can start thinking about this. But for those of you who have not started your urban agriculture activities, maybe you can also start doing it when you design your urban agriculture. And that brings me to the next topic of how we will have to develop your project assignments. Okay, but before we proceed to that next discussion, maybe we can have open discussion first, Mr. Haritz. Thank you for listening, and I welcome your comments, questions, and suggestions this time.
Okay, thank you, Pak Jess. So if you have any question or comments or suggestions, please send it through chat box to all panelists and we will relay it to Pak Jess. Okay, so we will wait for a few minutes before we continue with our next topic. Okay, so if there is no further question for now, we can continue to our next topic. But if you do have a question on our previous topics about the documentation of best practices, you can always send it to chat and we'll answer it later on. Okay, so please, Pak Jay.
Okay, so now I will be discussing with you the project assignment. So this is something that we would like you to focus on after our course, because this is the requirement for getting the certificate
Of completion.
for the training course online. And also this is your opportunity to win prizes and join the Southeast Asia Creative Camp in Lombok in May. Okay, so what is this assignment, the project proposal guidelines that we will be discussing? First, I just want to clarify that all of you who are participating in this online course, we expect that you will be coming up with a project proposal on urban agriculture. And we know that there might be two kinds of schools. Remember, I asked you before, how many of you are already practicing urban agriculture? Some of you have responded to my question in the WhatsApp. But then again, if there are schools that have not implemented urban agriculture, then what we expect you to do as a project proposal is to make a proposal on how to establish your urban agriculture activity in your school. You may choose any urban agriculture technology that we lectured on you. Maybe you just want to focus on hydroponic, aquaponic, mushroom production, or composting. It depends on you. But what is important, you can start your urban agriculture project. On the other hand, for schools that have been practicing urban agriculture activities, what we would like to request from you as a project proposal is to determine what kind of improvements you would like to do in your present activity. For example, if you learn something new from Miss Rihanna about hydroponic, maybe you would like to do that and improve the existing hydroponic system that you have. Or if you're doing composting different way from what Professor Arif told you, then maybe you would like to do some innovation in your composting activities, and so on and so forth. Or if you're using pot gardening, maybe you can improve that. So these are two possible areas of project proposal development that we would like you to do, depending on what status your school is in right now. Okay? Next, these are the project proposal requirements and components. I will discuss about the parts. So the project proposal requirements, your school can send more than one project proposal depending on the number of teams that you have. I understand there are some schools that have 3 teams or 2 teams, and there are some only 1 team. Remember, at least 1 team should be composed by 1 teacher and 3 students, but at least this is 3 students, or you can have more than 3 students, but not more than 10. Okay? Not more than 10 students in 1 team. And then the proposals must be consulted with and approved by your respective principal. Why is it necessary? Because if you win in the competition, you should be implementing your project proposal. Without the approval of your principal, definitely you may not be able to implement your project. That's why it's very important when you submit your project proposal to Biotrop, there is already approval by your school principal. And the proposal must be written in English. So you will also have to practice your English, writing English. You can consult editor or somebody who is more knowledgeable in English when you write it. But don't worry, we will not be too much concerned on the grammar. The important thing is the idea that you would like to be in your proposal. Of course, we know that English is not your first language, so we will understand if there will be some errors in the sentences. But what is important, we can get the idea, and it's very clear. Okay? So it should be typewritten, double space, using A4 size paper and Calibri font 11-point size, because we don't want to have many pages, because we will be limiting the proposal, number of pages in the proposal only for 12 pages, including photos, if you would like to include the photos and the figures, especially for the schools who would like to establish the urban agriculture for the first time. Then you can have design, where will you put your urban agriculture, what area in your school, you can make the design. Or for those who are already implementing urban agriculture activities, then you can have photo, and this is the problem in our system, and this is what we would like to improve, so we can see the comparison for the improvement later on. Okay, so these are the major requirements that we will request you to do. Let's move on. So what will be the components of your project proposal? So of course, there is project title, introduction, and the justification or the rationale why you are having this project, the objectives, the strategies for implementing your project or the activities that you need to do, the expected outputs from the project, how much time, how long you will implement the project, how much funding, money you need, and then the letter of approval from your principal, and also the list of your team members. Let's discuss this one by one. So for the project title, your project title should be very clear to describe properly what your project is all about. Not like project proposal on urban agriculture, finished. But this is not so clear. So what do you really want to do? It has to be there in the title. And the teams are also encouraged to come up with interesting titles, catchy titles, not boring titles. You can make acronyms, like for example, one proposal we received, the title is we have one proposal from the school garden, and the title is Green Library, establishing green library. But it's like in the school garden, and they will just be putting tables and chairs and books so the students will come and read. It's very interesting, but it depends on the methods and activities that to be done. So the title should be very interesting. Okay. Next, the introduction and the rationale. So this section should provide the general concept related to the proposal. Like for example, if your proposal is about hydroponics, what is hydroponic all about? So you just, but Rihanna already explained you about the concept of hydroponics. So it's just an introduction of, so your reader will also know what you are trying to work on. And then it should provide also background information about your school. How big is your school? Where is your school? What resources is found in your school? What kind of situation already there? What are the issues and the problems? Why you want to practice urban agriculture, and so on and so forth. And then your project proposal must be relevant and beneficial to the vision, mission, and goal of your school, so your principal can readily approve it. It's not just like, we would like to have extracurricular activity. That's it. But it has to be relevant to your school. Okay. Next is the objective. Maybe some of you already know the acronym SMART. When you do objective formulation, it has to be SMART. SMART means S, specific, M, measurable, A, attainable, R is realistic, and T is time bound. So if you want to have more explanation on that, I will explain it later. But just to be short about it, remember SMART when you do your objective. Okay? So in general, the proposed project should be able to support. We would like to see your project supporting the teaching learning function in your school. What would be the relevance of the urban agriculture project in your class activities? If it can improve your class activity or the relationship among your students, remember the economic, environmental, and social aspect I discussed earlier on. That's what we would like to see in the project. Whether you will be addressing the social aspect, that means education, literacy, nutrition, social interaction of your students, or the environmental, because you're doing composting, you want to minimize waste in your school, or economic, because you would like your students to produce vegetables that they can sell and earn money from them, for them and for your school. That is what I meant by the activities that you will do will support this kind of teaching learning function in your school or even in your surrounding communities. Okay? Next is about the strategies and activities that you would do. What activities that you will have to do when you have this project proposal? So it's just about explaining clearly how your team would implement and sustain the project so you can achieve the objectives that you formulated, your SMART objectives. So it is very important that the project that you will be doing should improve the knowledge, skills, and attitude of your students about urban agriculture, not just requirement, but they can really develop the appreciation about why we are doing urban agriculture. Second, your project should efficiently use the available resources in your school. It should not be expensive. Okay? It should be very efficient, whatever resources you have. Third, your project should be in harmony with the regular classroom activities of your students, not in conflict, because the major purpose of the school is the academic aspect. Urban agriculture will just be extracurricular, but then again, as an extracurricular activity, it can improve the learning process in your school. So be sure that when you do your project, it will not conflict with the classroom activities of your students. And the fourth, consider the safety of your students, because like you may be using some equipment that could be very sharp. So you have to be clear about that. And last, your project should improve your relationship with your students or even with your other colleagues, teachers while you do the activity. Okay, so the fifth component, okay, well, still about the strategies, but I just like you to consider this. It is advisable that you should attach a design of your project layout. So if you are introducing your urban agriculture, you draw something, so we will see what it is. Or if you would like to improve something on your urban agriculture, you also draw or having your photo. So it is, so when we judge your project proposal, we can see whether your proposal is really effective or really doable or not. And for schools who are already implementing urban agricultural activities, you are also advised to, like I said, come up with your current photos and show what aspects that you would like to improve. It is also important for your team to specify the kinds of vegetables that you would like to use, especially for schools that have not started urban agriculture. Why? What plants you would like to grow and why you choose this plant? Because there has to be a purpose. It has to be relevant. Okay? And then the last thing is we would like to see how your students will be involved or your team members will be involved. So you can also write the role of your team members. What will be your role as a teacher? And what will be your role of your students in the project? It has to be very clear. We don't want that only the teachers will do the project. It has to be a teamwork between you as teacher and also your team members as the students. Okay? Okay. So let's move on. On the expected outputs section, yeah, you just have to see what you want to produce. What kind of outputs you want to produce when you have to undertake your project proposal. And you have to be very concrete and you can it can be documented. For example, if your expected output is like, we want to see our students involved more in urban agriculture. So maybe what you would like to do is from the beginning, you have a benchmark survey. How many students are involved now in your activities? And after your project, how many students become more interesting to join? So you can measure, you can document. Okay? And lastly is what would be, not really, next please. Not really the end one. The second to the last is how long do you plan to implement your project? So just timeline, like month, April, what you would like to do, May, June, July, August. If you want to have it the whole year, we would like to see that activity list. Okay? And lastly, of course, you are you need some budget, so we would like to see whether your project is efficient and also doable and can be funded with minimum amount of money. Yeah? Okay? And of course, the letter of approval is for your principal to just say that we approve of this project proposal and we will commit to implement this project if it wins in the competition. Or even if it is not, it will not win, but if the project is good, then you can already implement it in your school. Next, of course, you just have to list your members so we will know. And because when we do the awarding in Lombok, we would like to write all your names in the certificate and so for your recognition. Okay, next, what will be the criteria for the judging your project proposal? So we have 5 criteria: feasibility, 20 points, creativity and innovation, 15 points, efficiency, 20 points, sustainability, the biggest, 30 points, expected impacts, benefit to the school, 15 points. So I'll discuss it one by one. So feasibility, it means it is very possible that you will implement that, you know, and it includes the following factors. It means that you have a clear analysis of the situation in your school. That's why you need to implement that. And then you will being able to identify the requirements. You know already what to be required. So what are the technical, logistical, and financial requirements? So we would like to see that in the proposal. And then you have a very smart set of objectives: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. If all these are present, then it means it's feasible. You can implement your project. Okay? Next, creativity and innovation. Of course, maybe you know that. our lecturers already give you some tips on composting, mushroom production, hydroponic, aquaponic, but maybe you would like to introduce something new. So it's creativity, it's innovation. So you will either modify, if you want to modify and improve your current practice, or introduce new things in your urban agriculture activities. That is creativity and innovation. Okay, next, efficiency, like what I have explained in the best practice earlier, you don't have to spend so much. So you maximize the available resources that you have in your school in terms of money, time, facilities, and the human resources that you have there, so you can accomplish your objectives. Next, sustainability. We give a lot of points here because we would like you to really continue your activities throughout so many years. So if your project can ensure your sustainability, then you get 30 points. So it means you have to consider the following aspect. It will not conflict with your workload as the teacher coordinator, and at the same time with your students' schedule. And the inputs required should not be too much, so even though you don't have much budget, you can continue to implement your urban agriculture. And then also it's the ability of your team to generate income, so you can use the income to continue on with your urban agriculture. Okay. Next, expected impact benefits. Like I said, if it is very clear from your introduction, what is the problem and what do you want to solve, then it should be visible at the end of your project. What is the effect to your students? What is the effect to your school? That's 15 points. Okay. So when you have considered all these things, we want you to submit the proposal to both Ms. Rihanna and Mr. Harris, because they are our online course coordinators. So you have the emails here. So I hope you took note of this already. So next, and we expect you to follow this timeline. Okay. So we are giving you starting tomorrow to think about your project until April 14 to formulate it and write together with your team. So about 2 weeks to write it. Like I said, only 12 pages. You don't have to worry about your English, whether it's right grammar. What is important, you put the idea very clearly in your proposal. Okay? And then by April 5, we expect every team that would like to join the competition to submit the proposal on that date. And then we will have at least 1 week. Our team, Ms. Rihanna, Mr. Harris, and myself will review your proposal, and we will select 8 to 12 teams to be the finalists. And then we will announce the finalists on April 12, and then we will require you to make a presentation of your proposals on 17 and 18 through WebEx, like what we are doing right now. So we will give you some guidelines on how you will prepare your PowerPoints once we already announce the finalists, and we will continue to email and give you some instructions further, so you will be ready to present on the 17th and 18th, and then we will announce the winners on April 20. I understand for our friends from Thailand, you will have your what they call this, the festival, New Year celebration, water festival, and that will be a long celebration starting about April 12 towards the end of the week. But hopefully you can already formulate your proposal before your holiday begins. Okay, next. So what are the prizes and what are the incentives? I already mentioned about this in the WhatsApp 2 weeks ago, but I would just like to repeat. For the first place, we will give a certificate of recognition plus 7 million rupiah per team, or equivalent of 525 US dollars per team. The second place, the same certificate of recognition, but we will be giving you only 6 million rupiah per team, or equivalent of 450 US dollars per team. And the third place will be certificate of recognition plus 5 million rupiah, or equivalent to 374 US dollars per team. And we would like to emphasize that this cash prize should be used by the team to implement their project proposal, if it is possible. If your school can commit some funding also to implement your project proposal, that would be much better. Okay? And also, next, the winning school or the winning teams per school will be our partner. So Biotrop will be signing MOU or Memorandum of Understanding with your school. So you will be our partner to promote urban agriculture in Indonesia, in Thailand, in Philippines, or wherever school you come from and whatever country you come from. And part of this MOU is that we will continuously give technical assistance to your school. For example, if you have problems with your hydroponic, then maybe Miss Rihanna can help, or for the mushroom, our staff can do that, or Professor Arif can still give you advice on your composting, and so on and so forth. So we will have this kind of partnership throughout our collaboration period. Next. So all teams that submitted project proposals will receive certificates of completion for attending this online course. If you don't submit project proposals, we will be giving you a certificate or no?
No.
So we will not be giving you a certificate of completion. So that's why I encourage you, for those of you who have really followed the course from the beginning until now, you might as well submit your project proposals so you can receive the completion certificate. And all the winning teams will also receive additional certificates of recognition.
This is for the one who have shared their expertise on our sessions.
Okay. So for those of you who have shared your expertise and experiences during the several sessions we had in the past, then we will be recognizing you by giving you the certificates also, because we learn, your colleagues also learn from you, and that's why we would like to recognize your effort about that. And all these certificates will be signed by our director, Dr. Erdika, and also Dr. Gatot, the director of Senior Secretariat, and also Mr. Barun from the Ministry, of the Directorate of Technical Vocational Education. Okay? And then for the winning teams to join our Southeast Asian Creative Camp in Mataram, West Nusa Tenggara, we will only be able to support only 3 members of your team. So the teacher and also 2 students, yeah, Ms. Rena? Or 3 students? So only 1 teacher and 2 students. So the teacher, if you have a team more than 2 or 3 students, then the teacher, you will select who you will bring in the camp to explain your project, winning project later on. So the Ministry of Education and Culture will be supporting your free registration, and you will have free accommodation for 4 nights and 5 days from May 6 to 12 in Mataram. We just don't know what hotel or what's the venue yet, because we will have to decide later on. And then again, we hope your school can find some funds to pay for your transportation expenses going to Mataram. That will be the responsibility of your school. Maybe for Indonesian schools, you can use ship, kapal transportation, land transportation, sea transportation, or air transportation, whatever will be more convenient and more practical for you in terms of funding. But for winning teams from other countries, then most likely you have to really find funding for your air ticket if you will be winning, and then also the domestic flight going to Mataram. Hopefully, you have enough time from April 20, once we announce the winners, until May 6 to generate this kind of funding for you to be able to attend the SIA camp. It will be very exciting because we expect a lot of students and teachers from all over Southeast Asia to join this Southeast Asian camp. So that is your opportunity if you win in our competition in urban agriculture. Next. And I think this will be our evaluators, mostly our resource persons. Okay, next. And thank you very much. I hope you get an idea of the project proposal. And so you will be starting to think about it with your team. Any question, I will be willing to answer, including our first session earlier on best practice documentation. Thank you very much for your listening.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak Yes. I hope that it is clear already about the project guidelines. And we already have several questions here from WhatsApp group actually, Pak.
Okay.
This comes from Miss Ari Satyawati from SMK 1 Malang. Just to be clear, so the final assignment for the schools, if they have implemented urban agriculture, is the assignment is making best practice document. And if they haven't implement any urban agriculture, the assignment is making proposal.
Thank you for the question, Bu. For schools that have already been implementing urban agriculture, what we would like you to do is also to make project proposals, but we would like you to see the focus of your project proposal is what kind of improvements you would like to do on your urban agriculture activities. For example, if your urban agriculture activity is only hydroponics, what else do you want to do on your hydroponics urban agriculture activity? So it will be much more better, effective, and so on and so forth. Or if you are practicing pot container gardening, what improvement you want to do? Maybe in the terms of fertilizer or whatever. So the idea is for those of you already practicing urban agriculture, we want to see improvements in your activities based on what you have learned from the lectures during our online course. For schools that have not practiced urban agriculture yet, we would like you to do a proposal on how you would establish your urban agriculture activity. And it's up to you whether you would like to just practice composting or any other technologies that you learn from our online course. I hope it is clear.
Okay, thank you, Pak Jes. And another question from also from Ms. Aris Tewati. Does the winning team divide between the school that will implement and have implement the urban agriculture activities?
Okay. Well, because we have limited funding to select, so that's why it is a competition general. So all schools, whether you have implemented urban agriculture and also not implemented, we will judge you together. And we will just really select 3 best project proposals. Okay. What we will try to see, maybe we will discuss from among us here in Biotalk if we may be able to give some special prize other than what the Ministry of Education and Culture will give, because the prizes will come from the Ministry of Education and Culture of Indonesia, from the Directorate General of Technical Vocational Education. But we will discuss it among us here in Biotrop. Maybe we can also select some other proposals, especially for those that will be introducing urban agriculture for the first time, because we would like to recognize your effort to really practice urban agriculture. We will tell you about that once we have the decision. We will ask Dr. Erdika, our director, if we can allocate some funding to also give additional prizes. Yeah?
Okay, thank you, Pak Jas. And okay, I think there is no question yet.
Okay.
So if any of you have some question, you can send it directly through chat box, or even you can send it through our WhatsApp group.
Yeah. Okay. For the best practice, I gave the lecture on best practice because we will also be having our training workshop in July here in Biotrop about identifying and writing best practice. Actually, this workshop in July is for our school garden training alumni. But because you will also be considered as our training alumni after the course, after you submit the proposal, then maybe for those of you who can right away start identifying your best practice, then you may join our training workshop in July in Biotrop. We can invite you because we will be requiring our training alumni to submit one page of their best practice, and that we will judge whether your practice is really best. That's why we will invite you, and then we will improve and write your best practice, because in the end we will be producing a book about best practices on school gardening and urban agriculture. So that's why I gave you the lecture on best practice. But for the Southeast Asia Creative Camp, it's all about producing the project proposal so you can join the competition and also receive your certificates of completion.
Okay, thank you. Question about the Promise Aprilia Rahayu, when is the due time for the project proposal?
So yeah, like we have shown on the table earlier, so we hope that you can submit your project before proposal on or before 5 April. Okay, so if you have some questions on how to write it, please do not hesitate to email me. Maybe later on I will give my email. Okay, okay. Mr. Harris is writing my email. So if you have some questions on how you will formulate your project proposal, don't be shy. Just email me if you have questions, then I can guide you to write it. Okay? So, but the important thing is you discuss first with your team, what do you want to do? And then write in bullets, point, and then we will, maybe I can discuss with you through email. We cannot extend the deadline anymore because we would like you to be able to prepare, for the winning team, to be able to prepare your travel documents, because the announcement of winners will be on April 20, and there will be only 2 weeks to prepare for the travel to go to Mataram. That's why because the Southeast Asian camp in Mataram will begin on 6 to 12, and we expect all participants to be already there 1 day or 2 days before, depending on the flights and transportation modes that you will be taking. I hope it is clear. I guess, like I said, I'll be willing to guide you, provided that you already have the draft, and then we can just give some tips. I will not revise it because we will be judging you. So I'll be answering your questions just to guide you. Okay?
Okay, thank you, Wajas. So I think we will wait a few more minutes for if there is another question from the participants.
Yeah.
So please, Bapak Ibu, if you have any questions.
So I think, well, there are no more questions, I believe so. Maybe I think now you're starting to think of what project proposals you are going to do, and I understand that. Hopefully, we expect that most of you, if not all of you, will really be able to submit your project proposals. Again, don't think too complicated. Just be sure that what you will do, you can implement. Remember the criteria that I told you. Make sure that it is implementable. It's not complicated. It's simple, but it's relevant, efficient, and sustainable. So, and don't worry about the grammar, the sentences. What is important is the main idea that we will be reading in your proposal. And once again, I'm willing to guide you if you have some questions, but I will not be correcting your proposals because we will be judging it eventually. So I'll just be giving you ideas on how to proceed with writing your proposals. I have given you my email there. Please take note of that, j.fernandez@biotrop.org. And I'm looking forward to receiving some emails from you guys. So with that, I would like to thank you all for your time and your patience to listen to this session, our last session. I hope you learned something about identifying and documenting best practice, and as much as possible, the guidelines for developing the project proposals. And we look forward to more interaction with you. Biotrop will be organizing other online courses other than this. We'll just announce it in our website. So we encourage you to visit our website every now and then so you will know what kind of online courses are available, so you can also join us anytime. Thank you very much, and all the best to all your teams.
Okay, thank you, Pak Jess. So that's it, our final session. So it's been a pleasure working with you guys, and we really hope that you enjoy our sessions and you learn some knowledge and insight on the urban agriculture especially. And with that, we wish you good luck with your final projects, and we really do hope that all of you can submit the final project to us. And we also hope that perhaps in next week we will send you a evaluation form. So we also hope that you can fill it to improve our online training program, so which work best for you, and what do you think about it. And we think we will also give some merchandise, yeah, but yes, we will give some merchandise for you who have filled this evaluation form.
And submit the first one. The first 3 to submit or 5 to submit, maybe we can give you some incentives. Okay?
Okay, so with that, we close this session. Thank you everyone for joining our program on this online training on urban agriculture. And also we thank Simulec, Mas Ruli, for
Thank
hosting
you,
our
Masuli.
Yeah, welcome.
Okay, so we hope to see you again on our next program. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, good. You've done. As if just yesterday we don't want